Reaction to President Trump's suggestion that the U.S., quote, take over Gaza rolling in this morning, including from lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Democratic Representative Rashida Tlaib taking to X to say this. The president is, quote, openly calling for ethnic cleansing while sitting next to a genocidal war criminal. Her tweet right there. Meanwhile, House Speaker Mike Johnson says they will stand with the president. Take a listen.
We await further details on what exactly that looks like. This is a bold, decisive move, and I think you have to do something to eradicate the threat to Israel. Here's the problem. If you leave Gaza in its current form, there's always a risk of another October 7. There's always a risk of proxies of Iran, all these terrorist organizations whose openly stated goal is to eliminate Israel as a state. So it just makes sense to make the neighborhood there safer. I think that's logical. I think it follows common sense. I think people understand the necessity of it. And we're going to stand with Israel as they work towards this goal. And we'll stand with the president on his initiative.
Well, that question was asked by our very own CBS News congressional correspondent, Nikole Killion. She joins us now. Nikole, great to see you. What other reactions are you hearing on the Hill to this?
Yeah, well, I just want to take a moment to talk a little bit more about Speaker Mike Johnson's comments and to clarify that the question that I put to him was yes or no. Does he agree with President Trump's statement that the U.S. should seize control of Gaza? And what you heard him there say is that he believes it's a bold and decisive move, but he also said that he believes that they should get more details, or they're awaiting more details. And also important to note that we are expecting Prime Minister Netanyahu here at the Capitol tomorrow. And so I also asked him if this is a position or a statement that he is going to reaffirm to the Prime Minister. So what you heard him there say, more or less, is that, look, we certainly understand the need to address the situation there, particularly in the midst of this ceasefire. His concern is obviously leaving things the way that they are could potentially lead to another October 7th. And so he, as you heard him there say, he believes that this is just, common sense, that you would want to do something to address the situation on the ground there. But at the same time, he did kind of put a little distance between himself and the president, in the sense of saying that we do need more details here. And he also told reporters earlier that while he does think it's a good development, he also sees it as a surprise development. And that really is more broadly kind of the sentiment that we have gotten from a number of lawmakers here on Capitol Hill who were a little, flat-footed or caught flat-footed in response to the president. Many other congressional Republicans have also taken a similar posture in saying, well, yes, we believe that the president certainly wants to maintain peace in the region, but we also believe that we should wait for more details. Democrats, on the other hand, have kind of taken, some of them, I should say, have taken more of the stance that you heard there from Congresswoman Tlaib in that X post, saying that they are concerned that this is just yet another example, in their view, of potential genocide, ethnic cleansing, trying to wipe or displace a group of people from the map. It is just something they simply don't agree with.
And while all of this is going on, Nikole, there's a really important deadline looming there on Capitol Hill, with just 6 weeks to go until federal government funding lapses. So what are lawmakers doing right now to avert that deadline?
Well, obviously, we're just a little more about a month out from that government funding deadline. I mean, behind the scenes, there have been discussions, both bicameral and bipartisan discussions around the path forward in terms of funding the government. But I would note certainly that Democrats are kind of operating with a little bit of trepidation here, from the standpoint of they are willing to work across the aisle with respect to making sure the government remains funded. But on the same note, they are very concerned about some of the things that they are seeing from the Trump administration with respect to how they are dealing with the federal workforce, in terms of the confusion, for instance, we saw last week over federal funding. Some of these efforts to try to shutter federal agencies. This is of a grave concern to a number of Democrats. So they are a little hesitant or feel like they should kind of draw some lines in the sand here in terms of going forward, making sure that if the government is funded, that, it can continues at the levels that it should, that these agencies continue to be funded as they should, rather than being shut down.
All right, let's switch gears to the confirmation watch there going on as well. Nikole, Pam Bondi sailed through yesterday, receiving this praise from President Trump. Who should we expect to see confirmed next?
Well, certainly one nomination that is coming down the pike is that of the president's pick for the Office of Management and Budget, Russell Vought. This is someone, once again, that Democrats remain concerned about, so much so that they have indicated, according to leadership sources that we have talked to, that they may hold the floor in protest of his nomination to try to slow it down and prevent it from moving forward. Of course, Russell Vought, some have claimed that he is the architect of that Project 2025, even though President Trump has put some distance between himself. That is something we heard a lot about on the campaign. Like I said, the president tried to distance himself from that blueprint from a conservative think tank. But nonetheless, again, kind of given all of the upheaval that we are seeing with a number of federal agencies, federal workers, they believe that this is somebody who may carry that out even further. And so that's why Senate Democrats plan to protest his nomination later today.
CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion, lots to go through. Thank you so much for helping to make sense of it all.